Bagseed Chronicles is a podcast about cannabis and the people who enjoy it. I hope to provide commentary about cannabis cultivation, cannabis enjoyment, cannabis as an herbal remedy, and hopefully continued cannabis liberation. Now join me, Uncle Dig, and let's overgrow the world. A little about me. I have been a medical grower in Oregon since 2016 in my small medicinal cannabis garden in the Rogue Valley. I am not originally from Oregon. However, I was born in Texas, but that is a story for another day. I love cannabis, and I love the people around cannabis. I will interview travelers, other home growers, medicinal growers, commercial producers, and who knows, maybe peel back the curtains on some black market shenanigans. Without getting anyone in trouble, of course. I believe that we all have a lot more to learn, and I believe that we should remove as many barriers as we can to information about cannabis. Given the continued march of legalization and liberation across the United States. When I first started visiting Southern Oregon in 2010, I felt I had discovered some sort of secret garden among the warrens of the West Coast. Everyone seemed pretty friendly, and it seemed like everyone either grew weed or knew someone who did. It was viewed as a sort of staple by some, and to this day, we know few areas rival Oregon's per capita cannabis consumption. I wasn't into weed as much then. I was in the military at the time and was subject to random drug testing. I had watched many of my fellow soldiers get unceremoniously booted from the military for smoking weed. I didn't want that to happen to me. But cannabis was starting to come to the forefront of my mind as I was leaving the military. And I wanted to get some, and I wanted to have a good time. But enough about me. Let's leave off my story and talk about some gardening essentials if you want to start a cannabis, or for that matter, any kind of garden. And that's calendars. It's really important outdoors especially, because you got to kind of know what your window is for getting outdoors from inside, and what your window is for planting seeds, and what your window is for hardening off, and what your window is for, really, you really want to get veg going before it gets too hot for the plants to really develop when they're small seedlings. You need to know when they're going to start flowering or around about what time, and all that kind of occurs in a window, right? Like nothing's really set at a detailed point in stone. So the more you grow, the more you'll kind of learn, what time of year stuff happens in your area. And it really can be different for you versus a guy 50 miles to the north, south, east, or west of you, depending on altitude and day length and all that stuff. So I highly recommend, on top of that you get a grow journal and take some, fairly simple notes every time you visit your garden, and try to visit your garden at the same time of every day. And you can kind of start to get a feel for what the weather is like in your specific microclimate. And that will help you increase yields and kind of know when to start treating for certain types of pests and all kinds of things as you grow in the same spot over the years. And this is true for other plants too, right? This isn't just true for cannabis. I mean, for instance, in my part of Oregon, February is the best time to cut back roses. So I'm always in my front yard through February cutting back my roses. So this will not just translate to growing cannabis. This translates to everything in your garden. And, I would suggest that if you keep a garden and you only want to keep one grow journal, then journal everything in your grow journal, not just your cannabis grow. If you have livestock, write little notes about them in there as well. I know I kind of keep tabs on how my chickens are laying and stuff. And we can get into chickens in a whole nother episode about how useful they are just in when you're cultivating other things in general. But I would say a grow journal and a calendar are your best friends when you're first starting to kind of garden in general, and specifically photosensitive plants like cannabis. Now, let's say you've got your grow journal, right? and you're trying to say, well, Uncle Dig, what should I put in my grow journal? Like, what should I write on the daily? And then that's really up to you. Bare minimum, you might want to think about like what you did in the garden. So like if you watered, how much did you water? Did you fertilize? How much did you fertilize? Whether you pruned or not that day. Any transplants you made, any cuttings, anything that you do with or to the plant, you should make a small note of it. Also, you might want to take notes about humidity and temperature if those fluctuate in your area. If you're inside a grow area, if you're indoors and your grow area is pretty stable, then maybe you don't need to make notes unless your temperatures go out of whack if you've got a really stable area. But outdoors, it can really help you troubleshoot later if you have run into some problems in the garden about like where humidity was. Like, maybe I should have put this out a little late because it tends to get a little humid for this plant during this time of year, or whatever. You can make some more educated decisions in your garden when it comes to plant placement and all that stuff. If you kind of know, what the overall temperature and environment is like in your garden. So I would definitely make some notes about environment and some notes about what you did with your plants. Now, I would say on top of that, journals aren't sustainable if you don't write in them. They don't serve any purpose if you don't take notes on the regular. So, I can tell you to take daily notes or take notes every time you visit your garden all I want. But if you end up making your notes a little too ambitious and you can't keep up with them, then they're really not serving the purpose of educating you about your space or helping you, understand your space better and your garden better. They're just a chore that you're avoiding, and that's no good. So I would say err on the side of simplicity in your notes if you're afraid that you're going to fall off the wagon, because cannabis and a lot of other plants are sensitive to how much water you give them. And if you don't remember how much you watered, yesterday, then you may not be able to make an informed decision on how much to water today. And your mileage may vary. There are a lot of growers out there that are very successful and kind of seem to fly by the seat of their pants. I've never been one of them. I always have benefited extremely from my notes, and I think that you will too. I think a lot of the barriers to people being able to keep plants alive is just not taking notes or not writing a little note in the calendar. I mean, it can be as simple as like writing, for instance, like 2/9. Today I watered this plant with X gallons. That's it. That's all it has to be. If you're not willing to write any more than that, I want you to make the journaling notes. So if you're only willing to write that, then only write that. And then later, as you cultivate a few more life cycles of the plant, you'll start to realize that maybe you want to know more than you thought you did. I know my journaling always seems to get more extensive, not less. Cannabis Considerations. Now, what do I mean by cannabis liberation? People who want to grow should be able to grow outdoors, regardless of what their landlord's preference is, especially outdoors. Cops should not be allowed to hurt people over cannabis. The police have had their say on cannabis policy. They chose to be violent. We should choose a better way. No state should be able to ban or penalize personal cannabis cultivation. All job drug testing should be outlawed. I'm not saying you should be high at work, but your boss shouldn't be able to tell you what to do in your off time. Everywhere alcohol and cigarettes are permitted, cannabis should be too. Not legalization, liberation. Fuck anything less. Let's overgrow the world. Thank you for listening to Bagseed Chronicles. You can contact me on Instagram at Uncle Dig or at my email, uncledig4@gmail.com. The producer of the music found on this podcast is Chad DeVilliers. He can be found on YouTube at Ukuleles Are Stupid and on Instagram at Chadwick Enterprises.